Hey everyone, Jimmie Walker. The man who once electrified living rooms across America with his booming Dy-no-mite catchphrase and unforgettable portrayal of J.J. Evans on the 1970s sitcom Good Times, has lived a life that's as complicated and tragic as it is legendary. Behind the laughter, the success, and the cultural impact of one of television's most important shows lies the story of a man who found fame almost overnight, but never quite found peace. His rise to stardom was meteoric, his influence undeniable. But as the cameras faded and the applause dimmed, Jimmie Walker found himself trapped between the character that made him famous and the world that couldn't see him as anything else. Born on June 25, 1947 in the Bronx, New York, James Carter Walker Jr. grew up in poverty, raised by hard-working parents who struggled to keep the family afloat. His father was a Pullman porter, and his mother cleaned houses, instilling in him a deep sense of discipline and survival. In those early years, Jimmy dreamed not of fame but of escape. Escape from the broken streets, the noise and the hopelessness that surrounded him. Comedy, he would later say, was his way out. He discovered early on that laughter could disarm pain, and as he got older, that realization became his compass. Jimmy's road to success began in the gritty clubs of New York during the late 1960s, where he performed stand-up comedy alongside names that would later become legends: Richard Pryor, Freddie Prinze, and David Brenner. He was sharp, bold, and fearless, tackling issues of race, class, and identity with humor that could make you laugh and think at the same time. His talent caught the attention of Norman Lear, one of the most powerful television producers of the time, who was developing a new sitcom about a black family living in a Chicago housing project, Good Times. It was 1974 when Walker was cast as James Evans Jr., better known as JJ, the wise-cracking, art-loving son of Florida and James Evans. The show became a cultural phenomenon almost instantly, breaking barriers by being one of the first sitcoms to center on a working-class African-American family. But as Good Times rose to fame, so did Jimmy. And that was where the trouble began. JJ was never meant to be the star of Good Times, but audiences fell in love with him. His over-the-top humor, his colorful outfits, and his infectious catchphrases turned him into an icon. Unfortunately, this sudden popularity created deep rifts behind the scenes. Co-stars Esther Rolle, who played Florida Evans, and John Amos, James Evans Sr., grew frustrated with how the show's focus shifted from serious social commentary to slapstick comedy centered on JJ. They believed the show was losing its message about real black life in America and turning into a caricature. Esther Rolle famously criticized the writers for making JJ a clown, and both she and Amos clashed openly with producers, and, at times, with Jimmy himself. While Walker insisted he was simply doing his job and playing the character as written, the tension on set became unbearable. Amos was eventually written off the show, and Rolle left soon after, leaving Jimmy as the face of a series that had once been about family unity. The irony was cruel. The funny man who made the world laugh was now standing alone. After Good Times ended in 1979, Jimmie Walker found himself typecast. Hollywood, which once couldn't get enough of him, suddenly didn't know what to do with him. Casting directors couldn't see past J.J. Evans, the goofy, lovable kid from the projects. Serious roles were out of reach, and sitcom offers were either cheap imitations or demeaning stereotypes. He bounced around television for years, appearing on shows like The Love Boat, Fantasy Island, and Match Game. But the magic of the 1970s was gone. The laughter that once followed him everywhere became a haunting echo. He tried to revive his stand-up career, touring the country, often performing in small clubs where fans would shout "Dy-no-mite" from the audience. At first he embraced it, but as time went on, he admitted it became painful. A reminder of a success he could never outgrow. "You don't want to resent the thing that made you," he once said. But it's hard when it's the only thing people remember. Jimmie's story turned more bittersweet. While many of his peers moved into producing, directing, or reinventing themselves, he remained largely stuck in nostalgia, making appearances at fan conventions and on talk shows, often reflecting on the past. But it wasn't just his career that took a toll. His personal life was marked by solitude and loss. Jimmie never married and has no children, something he has spoken about candidly. He once said that his lifestyle simply didn't leave room for family. "I've always been a loner," he admitted. "I live my life on my own terms." While some admired his independence, others saw the sadness behind his words, the loneliness of a man who gave the world laughter, but had no one to share it with. Adding to the tragedy is how Jimmie's public persona often clashed with his private beliefs. Over the years, he became known for his politically conservative views, something that made him an outsider in the entertainment industry. He openly supported Republican politicians and criticized Hollywood for what he saw as hypocrisy. While his opinions earned him attention, they also alienated him from many of his peers and fans who saw his stance as contradictory to the working-class struggles Good Times represented. Yet Jimmie never apologized for who he was. "I'm not a stereotype," he once said. "I don't follow the crowd. I think for myself that fierce independence, while admirable, also isolated him further from an industry that thrives on unity and image." Health concerns also shadowed his later years. Though he has never gone into detail, friends and colleagues have noted that he's slowed down significantly, appearing frail and tired during public appearances. The man who once bounced across the screen with energy now speaks softly, often reflecting on mortality and the fleeting nature of fame. In interviews, he's admitted that he sometimes wonders if his career could have gone differently, if he'd fought harder to diversify his roles, or if Good Times had stayed true to its original vision. But he also insists he has no regrets. "I did what I was supposed to do," he said. "I made people laugh. That's all I ever wanted." Perhaps the most heartbreaking part of Jimmie Walker's story is how misunderstood he remains. Younger audiences may only know him as a meme or a nostalgic punchline, unaware of how groundbreaking his work truly was. Before Good Times, there were few black sitcoms on television, and fewer still that portrayed the complexity of poverty and resilience with humor. Jimmie Walker helped pave the way for future comedians and actors, from Martin Lawrence to Eddie Murphy, who would take comedy into new heights. But fame is fickle, and for every laugh he created, there was a price he paid. The loneliness, the creative frustration, the sense of being trapped in a time capsule, all of it became part of his legacy. Today, Jimmie lives quietly, occasionally appearing for interviews or nostalgic retrospectives, still sharp, still witty, but marked by the weight of a lifetime spent chasing laughter that sometimes came at the expense of his own happiness. He often reflects on the lessons of Good Times, how it showed the strength of a family that had nothing but love, and how, in real life, love and connection were the things he struggled to find. The tragedy of Jimmie Walker isn't just that Hollywood forgot him, or that fame faded. It's that behind the humor, the big smile, and the unforgettable catchphrase was a man who spent his life trying to be seen beyond the joke. He was a trailblazer who broke barriers, but who also paid the ultimate price of stardom, being forever defined by one moment in time. For millions of fans, he'll always be JJ, the symbol of laughter in hard times. But for Jimmie Walker himself, that legacy is both a blessing and a burden. His story is a reminder that the brightest stars often shine the loneliest, and that even when the world calls you Dy-no-mite, it doesn't always mean you're okay inside. Thanks for watching.